This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All righty, time to talk a little Dolphins football with my man Tashan Reed, of course, Vegas Raiders beat writer, which I'm still trying to get used to that, by the way, for The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at Tashan Reed. Tashan, how you doing, my brother? Hanging in there?
Great, man. Yeah, it's been a minute. Enjoying see y'all got snow down in Florida, acting different down there. I'm enjoying the nice weather out here in Vegas, man.
Jesus, snow in the panhandle, bro. Like inches of snow in the panhandle. I'm in Miami and I'm freezing my ass off in the 50s, bro. I mean, it's just, it feels like when I go to Vegas at times that at
Yeah.
night it gets cool. You know what I'm saying? I got to wear the jacket if I'm going to go, outside or something like that. So, yeah. By the way, now that you've been there, what is this? Is this year 3 or 4 now?
So I've been in Vegas since 2020, so it's five years.
5 years.
Yeah,
Wow. So
it's
this
been
is
a
going to be
while.
this is going to be your 5th year now. Wow.
Yeah.
And so how's the adjustment for you, bro? Like it's a
I mean,
complete adjustment from Florida to Vegas, dude.
yeah, it's been kind of a culture shock. I mean, I'm from St. Louis, so I'm not even, from like a big city, so I'm more used to kind of the smaller town kind of vibes and going to Florida, Tallahassee in particular, that's a unique experience, but very, very different from Las Vegas. I had never been to Las Vegas before I took this job, so I didn't have any sort of familiarity. I didn't know what I was getting into. And I moved here during COVID, so it was weirdness anyway, all around. But
That's everywhere.
yeah, it's just Vegas isn't really a real place. That's what I tell people. Like it's everything here is it's all the lights and the glamour, and there's always something going on. Nobody ever sleeps. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. Like the strip is always the same as it is. Whether it's 6 a.m. or 10 p.m. So it's been a fun time. It's been cool to be a part of this sort of sports revolution that the city has
Well, that's
had.
watching. Yeah, you're watching it explode sports wise. It's become actually Vegas has now become a sports central hub for
Yeah.
us because of boxing and MMA and F1 and football and baseball's coming and and summer league and hockey. And by the way, the most screwed up thing I've ever seen in Vegas is that I would have bet my entire savings, life, everything that the NBA was going to be the first pro team there.
Yeah.
Last,
I mean, I think it still could
not the
come.
last, not
It
the
hasn't
last.
hasn't. Yeah, yeah. That's the ordering is a little interesting, but I think that '07 All-Star game might have had something to do with that.
Okay, but I still didn't see it because they're the most liberal league out of all of them. So
Yeah,
remember all the gambling stuff, they were all so uptight about it. I go, okay, the NBA will be the one that will break the ice for everybody. Little did I know they're going to be the last one to get in,
yeah.
dude, which is just, absolutely crazy. All right, so you've been part of craziness there with the Raiders. I've been part of craziness. When I was a kid, I enjoyed some good times in the 70s and early 80s. But after that, it's kind of been craziness since then. So you reported Darrell Bevell in the mix for the Raiders offensive coordinator position. And so talk to us a little bit about what you know for the Dolphins OC there in Raiderland.
Yeah, so the Raiders, they hired Pete Carroll as head coach on Friday. Longtime Seattle Seahawks head coach, in addition to other places that he's been a head coach at, of course. But that's probably what he's known most prominently for. And Bevel was a longtime offensive coordinator for him there. They helped win a Super Bowl together back during the Russell Wilson days. And things ended on a sour note, but everybody gets fired at some point, right? So they still have a good relationship, and the Raiders obviously have to conduct an offensive coordinator search. And Bevel's one of the leading candidates right now. He has that familiarity with Carroll. He's experienced. He's been an offensive coordinator multiple times during his career. He's a guy that knows the type of system that Pete Carroll wants to run, and so I think it makes a lot of sense. They're going to consider other candidates, of course. They have to because of the Rooney Rule, and so and we'll also see if the Raiders GM John Spytek, who came from the Buccaneers, maybe he has some influence in the coaching staff and has some names to consider as well. So it won't just be Bevel, of course, but I think he's a pretty strong candidate to get that Raiders OC job.
Well, you've been in the league now for a few years, and so have I. Familiarity is the most important thing there is I've ever seen in my life. And the fact that Bevel and and Carrol worked for so long and successfully, by the way, and harmoniously, by the way. I just think this is a match made in heaven, and I'm going to add something. In Mike McDaniel's closing press conference, he was questioned about play calling because Tashan, as I've said it on my show many times, he's horrible. He's like me in the kitchen. Okay. You could give me all the ingredients and everything, right? My daughter will make a beautiful meal, an absolutely delicious meal. But if I have the ingredients, I'm going to screw it up. It's not going to look good. It's not going to taste good. You know what I'm saying? My daughter is the right coach to put in the kitchen. I'm not the right coach to put in the kitchen. This guy's a horrible coach. This guy has no feel for the game, does not believe in sticking to the running game, all of that. I've been calling for Frank Smith to be the OC. You know, that's what I said this offseason. I said he needs to relinquish it, but he's not. And then you could go back and check out the press conference, and you might want to use that quote, by the way, because I'm going to paraphrase it in a way. But he basically, when asked about play calling, I believe it was David Furones that asked him, and he said, no, I feel I'm the best person in the building to do this. He basically shit on everybody. Instead of maybe being a little bit more, PC and say, hey, listen, we got a lot of great coaches in here. Frank Smith can do the job. Darrell Bevell can do the job. I know those guys are fantastic coaches. They work with me every week and get me prepared. But this is the moment I've been waiting for, and I feel like I can do this job. But the way he phrased it was, I'm the best guy by far in the building. And so if I'm Frank Smith, if I'm Darrell Bevell, I'm like, yo, dude, I don't have a shot here. I'm not. This guy will get fired before he even gives me a shot. So when I see your story, I think Darrell Bevell right now is in church praying that the Raiders say, offer him the job, I need the job. Plus, I think McDaniel's here for one more year, and then they blow everything up. So this gives Darrell Bevell an opportunity to go somewhere else for a multiple-year deal, and he can continue. And by the way, even though they don't have a quarterback, at least he gets to go prove himself.
Right. And I think that's the thing. You're starting with a clean slate with the Raiders. Pete Carroll got a 3-year deal with a team option for a 4th year. And so barring something crazy, you're going to at least get a couple seasons calling plays here in Las Vegas to prove yourself. And as you mentioned, the quarterback situation is not good. It's really bad. Aiden O'Connell is really the only guy on the roster right now, and he's really a backup. And so the Raiders are going to have to get aggressive this offseason to, whether it's a veteran or a rookie, try to upgrade that quarterback position for the offense really to have a chance to be productive. They do have some pieces. Brock Bowers, of course, the first team All-Pro as a rookie, sensational player. Some lower level guys like Jacoby Myers that are pretty nice. They have some pieces on the offensive line. So it's not bare bones, but you need a quarterback. And so that can be intimidating for some. But if you're a guy that, like you said, is a position coach on a staff where it's feeling a little dicey going into next year, and you have opportunity to be a play caller, you take that 10 times out of 10. So really, I think it just comes down to whether or not the Raiders offer him the job, and we'll see how that plays out over the course of the next week or so.
What pick do they have in the draft?
6.
They still may get a quarterback. You know that, right?
Yeah, they could. I mean, it's just a little bit tricky when you have like some other quarterback needy teams ahead of you. Obviously, the Titans at 1, the Browns at 2, the Giants at 3. And so if, I kind of find it hard to believe that both the Titans and the Browns are going to pass on a quarterback. But even if it's just one of them, the Giants are going to, sell an arm and a leg to trade up to get a quarterback because they have to, because their staff is kind of in a similar situation as the Dolphins staff. It's like, if you don't win this year, like, you're getting fired, So I think there's teams ahead of the Raiders who also need a quarterback who probably could be more desperate, considering, that this is going to be the first year for Pete Carroll and John Spytek. They can push it to next year if they absolutely have to. So they could still get one, and then also there's some veteran options out there that aren't terrible. Russell Wilson could be available. Geno Smith may be in a trade. So you can get a stopgap guy. He may not be your long-term answer for the next 10 years, but you can get a guy that you can get some competent play out of this season.
Well, I mean, I know Shador is not going to be there, and Cam Ward's not going to be there. Although you look at Jackson Dart, might be a guy that they can trade down a little bit, pick up extra picks, and then get Jackson Dart somewhere in the middle of the first round or late first round or something like that. I think a Kyle McCord. I like him for the Dolphins, actually, because since Tua wants to play stupid football and he thinks he's like a football player or something, and he wants to go seek contact, which is I don't understand Tua, by the way. As much as I believe in him as a passer, I don't get how he thinks he's Josh Allen sometimes. I don't think he understands some things. But that's why I've said Kyle McCord. There's going to be a couple of guys in the late to first, to second, third round that might be kind of interesting that the Raiders, like a Kyle McCord, he's a smart, accurate guy. He's got an NFL arm. He might be a middle round pick that might end up becoming a decent quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think day two, there could be some guys worth exploring there. If you go best player available at 6, whoever that happens to be, and then try to get it. I mean, the Raiders, their longest tenured quarterback this millennium is Derek Carr, who was a second round pick. So you can get an answer. It doesn't have to be in the first round.
No, it doesn't have to. So, and I know this is not the greatest draft of all, and obviously the Georgia kid coming to Miami instead of going to the draft, that also hurt because that would have been, another option there. By the way, Quinn Ewers? What do we know about him? I forgot. Is
He
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 going?
declared he declared for the draft. Yeah,
Oh,
him and Jalen Milroe, they both declared. So
other guys. So all these kind of guys, those are middle round guys, dude. Those are middle
yeah.
round guys.
Yeah, I don't see them coming out of the draft without taking somebody somewhere. It's just a matter of when they pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, there's actually, I think, some interesting projects. I'm not saying like they're can't miss or anything, but there's some dudes there that have NFL talent. Now, is it polished enough to become a starter? Well, that's the part that we don't know,
Right.
and they got to figure that shit out. All right. So, what are the other candidates that you talked about a little bit? What are your chances? What do you see, Bevel? What should the Dolphin fans expect Darrell Bevell as a loss? Because I actually think it's a huge loss for Tua.
I don't know if expect is the word, but it's possible. So be on alert for it. I think the other options for the Raiders, Byron Leftwich comes to mind. He was the Bucks offense coordinator when Brady was there as a quarterback, and also worked with Spytech for a couple years. Bucks quarterbacks coach Thad Lewis is another one. That has some connections there. And then once you get outside of that, there's you kind of get into the area of former offensive coordinators from other teams, whether it's Bobby Slowick, who just got fired, or Clint Kubiak, or Brian Johnson, the Eagles' old offense coordinator, who's with the Commanders now, making a playoff run. So there's some other guys out there they could turn to, and as I said, they have to have a full search. Same thing at defensive coordinator before they just hire somebody. I do think Bevel's the front runner among those names, but it's not a done deal for sure. So as a Dolphins fan, I would say be on alert. You know what I mean? But it could be a situation where they just roll with somebody else.
All right, Tashan, we'll wrap it up with this. Tashan Reed, follow him on Twitter at Tashan Reed, and catch his work there at The Athletic, by the way. You catch Manny here twice a week on our show, and he's on The Athletic. If you subscribe to Manny, you subscribe to Tashan Reed, too, at the same time. Tom Brady, how much input, how much impact does he have in the decision-making process for the franchise?
I mean, it's I kind of would compare it to for basketball terms. He's sort of like, I don't know if I go as far as Pat Riley, but kind of what Jerry West was his last few years with the Clippers and Warriors. He's essentially sort of like the highest level advisor that they have on football decisions.
Okay.
And so he isn't, by rule, he can't be the, let's say, president of football operations or something of that nature. But when it comes to major decisions, firing, hiring, draft, free agency, like, he's going to be somebody that's consulted. And with this search, I mean, you saw his impact pretty much right away. They didn't plan on firing Tom Telesco, but they wanted to try to strengthen their pitch for Ben Johnson as much as they could. And somebody that was really pushing for that was Tom Brady. And he was, actively tampering with Ben Johnson in the playoffs as a Fox broadcaster. They were on Zoom calls for hours at a time throughout that process. And, when that didn't work out, who did they hire at GM? John Spytek, who was Brady's college teammate at Michigan back in 1999. And as I mentioned earlier, he was in Tampa Bay when the Bucks signed Tom Brady and they won a Super Bowl down there. So that's his guy, and then he hasn't, he didn't play for Pete Carroll and they don't have a formal connection, but they know each other. Obviously they played in the Super Bowl against each other that went Tom Brady's way, and he has a ton of respect for Pete Carroll. And so Even though there's not an obvious tie there, that's something, you can see that Brady's influence was involved, on that end, in addition to the GM spot. So, I mean, he's pretty heavily involved, bought into the team last October, and in a matter of 3 months, he pretty much guided their coaching and GM search. So,
Crazy stuff.
He's setting himself up for a big role in the future.
All right, let's see if he can. Turn it around, because it's the Raiders and the Dolphins. We're watching Washington now. The Raiders, Dolphins, Washington were like royalty in the NFL a while back. Washington.
It was a while now.
It's been a while. So Washington is the one that's coming out of the ashes now. The Dolphins and the Raiders still haven't been able to find what they used to be back in the day, dude. So it's crazy, man. So we'll see what happens. Tashan, thank you for taking the time on a Saturday, man. I really appreciate it immensely. Enjoy Vegas, my brother. Enjoy Disneyland for adults.
That's a good description. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, baby. Be good.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.